in time to become a superstar, and quit again. Throughout his 30-year solo career, he never let his audience get a clear beat on him. If he reached the top with acoustic music, he went loud and electric. When he built the following among alternative rock fans, he switched to mellow folk. In a world full of insecure singers who do anything for a hit, Neil Young was always fiercely true to himself. Whenever he was asked to compromise, he walked away. Neil Young is a legend. This is his story.
When I write the songs, when I write the songs, I feel mostly like I guess I'm writing about a part of me that I don't know if I'll ever share.
There is a town in North Ontario.
Neil Young spent his early childhood in Ontario. When he was 5, he contracted polio and had to be rushed to Toronto, 90 miles away. For the long ride to the hospital, Neil's father gave him a toy train to carry. He would not let go of it the whole way.
I was going to the hospital, and I remember lying on the floor in the back of the car. We were in a hurry to get there. I didn't really realize how serious it was or anything. I don't remember having a little train with me, but I'm glad I did, if I did.
Neil was lucky. He recovered from polio. It was the beginning of a lifetime of dramatic ups and downs. A few years later, he got a plastic ukulele for Christmas. He took to it immediately, and later moved to acoustic guitar. His father, Scott Young, was a well-known sports journalist. Neil grew up the child of a local celebrity.
He's a figure in Canadian sports and in Canadian journalism. He's in the NHL Hall of Fame, so people knew who he was, and then I was his son, and then he used to joke about, he was the father of Neil Young, and when I was growing up, I was the son of Scott Young.
My old dad went walking one day, pushing tall weeds right out of his way.
In 1960, his parents split, and Neil moved with his mother and his brother to Winnipeg, where Neil's mom, Rassie, found fame of her own as a panelist on a TV quiz show.
After my parents had split up, and when we were living in Winnipeg, she did this panel show. And it was just kind of I think it was called 20 Questions. In those days, panel shows were all the rage.
Neil did not fit in at his new school. He fought with bullies and got poor grades. But he loved rock and roll and started playing in local bands.
I was just focused on doing the music, and that's all I really cared about. I mean, I was behind with girls. I was behind with everything. I had no idea what was going on with anything other than music. I mean, I was just so mono that it was like pretty scary.
After failing the 10th grade, repeating it, and then failing the 11th grade, Neil dropped out of high school and devoted himself to music. His band, the Squires, achieved modest success on the local scene. Neil hauled his bandmates and their equipment around in an old hearse. At one gig, the Squires shared the bill with a group called The Company, whose singer and guitarist was an American named Stephen Stills. Neil and Stephen hit it off immediately and agreed to stay in touch. In Toronto, Neil met a bass player named Bruce Palmer. They both ended up in an R&B group called the Minor Birds. The lead singer was an American named Ricky James, who would become famous years later as funk star Rick James. The Minor Birds drove down to Detroit and auditioned for Motown.
I was playing a 12-string. I must have had the first acoustic 12-string at Motown. Rick was great. I mean, he was out front, and Bruce and I were playing. It was a good band, really good beat.
Motown signed them, but it was too good to be true. It turned out that Rick James was a deserter from the Naval Reserves. When the feds realized he was back in the States, they arrested him.
I think Rick got busted for dodging the draft, and our manager OD'd. That happened kind of at the same time. So that was the end of our Motown era.
Neil and Bruce Palmer sold the Minor Birds equipment and used the money to drive Neil's hearse to Los Angeles. Neil wanted to find Stephen Stills and start a new band, but he had no idea where to look for him. While stuck in a traffic jam on the Sunset Strip, Stills spotted Neil's hearse.
Well,
Bruce and I came to Los Angeles in an old hearse to start, to try to, make stars, we're going to be stars. So we were just about to leave, and I saw him in a van going the other way on Sunset, and he stopped me, and we stopped, and we all stopped, and then we started.
Neil spotted a logo on a steamroller and took the name for their band, the Buffalo Springfield. One night in 1966, following a violent confrontation on the Sunset Strip between young people and the police, Stephen Stills picked up his guitar and wrote what would become Buffalo Springfield's first hit.
Something happening here, but what it is ain't exactly clear.
I got busted by the cops. Remember when they took me down there where the police station was? The one cop called me an animal. So I called him a grasshopper.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. They came in and knocked my tooth out, this one right here, and did this other stuff and banged us around. It happened really fast. That was kind of like the ambience, we were freaks in a pretty cool car, and bang, in jail. For whatever, who knows.
That happened to you before.
Yeah, before the Sunset.
Before the Sunset thing, so we were already prepared.
Yeah.
The Buffalo Springfield exploded. All Neil's teenage dreams of rock stardom were coming true.
Oh, hello, Mr. Soul, I dropped by to pick up a reason.
But it didn't have the effect he expected. Neil was confused by fame. It was not something he could control, and control was very important to Neil Young.
Is it strange I should change? I don't know. Why don't you ask her?
Neil shocked his bandmates by refusing to appear on the Johnny Carson show. He thought it was too showbiz. He infuriated them by quitting the group days before the Monterey Pop Festival.
Out of my mind, and I just can't take it.
He returned to the Springfield long enough to contribute to a farewell album. In less than 2 years, all of Neil Young's rock and roll dreams had come true, and he turned his back on them.
Out of my mind. Used to play in a rock and roll band, but they broke.
In 1967, the Buffalo Springfield was at the peak of its success, but Neil Young was not enjoying fame. He wanted to control his own destiny. Rock stardom had turned his life upside down. Amid all the rock star craziness, Neil began to have seizures. The doctors told him he had epilepsy.
I try to remember when it first happened to me. When I was in my early 20s, it was active. The first time I remember, having a seizure was when I was about 20 in Hollywood. It's part of my makeup, and there's something about it that's part of me, and I don't really know what it is, but I know it's not gone. It's just not manifesting itself the way it was.
Neil released his first solo album in January 1969. It failed to make a dent on the charts. He began jamming with a band called The Rockets, Danny Whitten on guitar, Billy Talbot on bass, and Ralph Molina on drums. They brought out something raw and honest in Neil. They started playing together under a new name, Neil Young and Crazy Horse. In bed with 103-degree fever, Neil wrote Down by the River, Cinnamon Girl, and Cowgirl in the Sand in a single day.
I had a fever one day, and I was starting to feel better, but I still had the fever, And so that day I wrote those 3 songs, sitting in my bed.
Those 3 songs became the backbone of Everybody Knows This Is Nowhere, the first album by Neil Young and Crazy Horse. Recorded in 2 weeks, it became Neil's first gold record. He was enjoying success in his personal life as well. He married Susan Acevedo, and they settled down in California's Topanga Canyon.
Susan, my first wife, was a wonderful lady. She was older than I was, and I really wasn't grown up enough for her. You know, it took me a long time to grow up because all my growing up time was spent on music. All the other things suffered for it. So, but luckily, you know, I'm surrounded by people who understand me, and you know, I caught up with it more or less.
Just as Neil was settling into his solo career, his Buffalo Springfield partner Stephen Stills asked him to join his new group, Crosby, Stills and Nash. Neil decided to split his time between his solo work and CSN.
When you were young and on your own, how did it feel to be alone? I was always thinking of games that I was playing.
When they called me up and asked me to come and play with them, I looked at it as a chance to continue my relationship with Stephen and play more music with him. And also we had these guys that sang great, wrote really cool songs, and it seemed like something that I could do and, you know, get into.
Yes, only love can break your heart. What if your world should fall apart?
Neil's a brilliant, deep guy, but a huge creative force. He's very powerful, and he changes the chemistry.
I knew coming into this that this chemical equation was going to be, like David said, it's like, you know, juggling 4 bottles of nitroglycerin. And if you drop one, you don't just drop one, they all go off. And I knew that it was going to be an exciting ride, but the music overwhelmed all those fears.
I realized that he was one of the best songwriters in the world. And as unusual and different as his voice was, you know, that it was immensely communicative, and that he was brilliant at making, you know, emotions accessible to the people, and that he could do it. He was one of the magicians. You know.
Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young made Neil rich and famous.
She could drag me over the rainbow, send me away.
Of CSNY's Deja Vu tour, he released his solo album after the gold rush.
Southern man, better keep your